Let's get one thing straight. This is not about kink shaming or judging someone's preferences. It's about awareness. It's about understanding how sex isn't just a physical act, but a deeply psychological, emotional, and even spiritual experience. Sex is more than just a physical act. It's deeply psychological. What many people fail to realize is that behind every touch, every preference, and every moment in intimacy lies a complex web of emotions, subconscious beliefs, childhood experiences, and internalized desires. The physical connection may last a few minutes, but the emotional residue, the meaning behind every act, often lingers far longer. When two people engage in sex, their emotional states are silently communicating. A woman may appear to be enjoying herself, but in truth, she may be using the act as a tool for validation, to gain emotional leverage, or even to distract herself from deeper insecurities. On the surface, it's bodies meeting, but beneath that, it's about trust, vulnerability, control, and sometimes manipulation. The psychological layer of sex can't be ignored because it's where true intimacy either blooms or dies. Take, for example, a woman who can't seem to enjoy closeness, who avoids eye contact, prefers detached or dominant positions, and never allows herself to be truly vulnerable in bed. That behavior isn't random. It often signals deeper emotional blocks. Maybe she's been hurt before. Maybe she learned that control equals safety. Or perhaps she sees sex as a battlefield where the one who feels less is the one who wins. Her choices in the bedroom are not just preferences, they're psychological responses. On the flip side, a woman who uses sex as a way to secure attention or affirmation isn't connecting for love. She's performing for approval. She might appear confident, liberated, or adventurous, but the truth could be the opposite. When a woman only feels worthy when she's desired, her relationship with sex becomes transactional, not intimate. She gives her body, hoping to buy love in return. Sex also reveals how a person views themselves. Someone who's been objectified their whole life may have internalized that identity and now offers themselves the same way. It's not that they enjoy certain positions more, it's that they've been conditioned to believe that this is all they're good for. Their worth is tied to performance, not connection. That belief system shapes how they show up in bed and in relationships. It's important to see past the movements and the moans. What is her body language really saying? What is she avoiding? What is she trying to control? True intimacy requires openness, emotionally, mentally, and physically. When one of those is shut down, the sex may still happen, but it won't nourish the relationship. If a woman can't be vulnerable with you in the most intimate space, it's not just a bedroom issue, it's a relationship issue. Sex is psychological. It mirrors how we love, how we trust, and how we fear. The desire for control and power in the bedroom often reveals more than people are willing to admit. While intimacy is supposed to be a space of mutual vulnerability and connection, for some women, it becomes a stage for dominance. Not dominance in the healthy, consensual sense, but in a way that reflects a deeper emotional need to assert control over the relationship, the dynamic, or even the man himself. When a woman insists on taking control during intimacy all the time, it's worth asking, what is she really trying to dominate? In many cases, this desire stems from emotional insecurity or past trauma. A woman who has experienced emotional instability or betrayal may start to associate control with safety. In other words, if she controls how the intimacy happens, when it happens, and how you react to it, then she feels protected. She doesn't have to be vulnerable. She doesn't have to risk being hurt. So she takes the reins, not because she's empowered, but because she's afraid to surrender. There's also a group of women who use control as a form of psychological warfare. They understand the power of seduction and how to manipulate through physical connection. These are women who are emotionally detached, but sexually calculated. They use their bodies not as an offering of love, but as a tool for manipulation. They perform, dominate, and direct every move, not to connect with their partner, but to stay in control of the narrative. Their power in bed becomes a substitute for power in the relationship. Some women confuse control with confidence, but real confidence allows space for both people to feel safe, expressive, and free. Control, on the other hand, often silences the man's needs and desires. It becomes a one-sided performance where his pleasure is secondary and his emotional input irrelevant. This can lead to an imbalance, not just physically, but emotionally. The man begins to feel like a participant in her agenda rather than a partner in shared intimacy. It's also important to understand how this desire for control shows up. It may not always be aggressive or obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, insisting on one specific position every time, directing every touch, every movement, never letting go, never allowing spontaneity. It might come across as experience or passion, but when it's always on her terms, it's something deeper. It's not about mutual pleasure, it's about control masked as desire. When control becomes the foundation of intimacy, love struggles to grow. Intimacy should be a dance, not a dictatorship. It should allow both people to feel seen, heard, and respected. But when one person always needs to control the rhythm, the depth, and the direction, it ceases to be a connection and becomes a performance, an act of power, not passion. Performance-driven intimacy is one of the most misunderstood yet widely practiced forms of modern sexual connection. It looks passionate, wild, and exciting on the surface, but underneath, it's often empty. In relationships where intimacy is driven by performance rather than genuine emotional presence, what you're witnessing is not connection, but calculation. And many women, knowingly or unknowingly, fall into this trap, using their bodies not as an expression of love or desire, but as a stage to act out fantasies, roles, or expectations for approval, validation, or control. A woman who engages in performance-driven intimacy is often not present in the moment. She's hyper-aware of how she looks, how she sounds, how her partner perceives her. Every move is calculated, every moan rehearsed. She's not focused on what she feels, she's focused on what she thinks she should be making you feel. Her worth in that moment is tied to your reaction, not her own emotional fulfillment. This is where intimacy becomes transactional. She gives a show in hopes of receiving love, commitment, or validation in return. You see, some women are conditioned from early on to believe that their value lies in how well they can perform in bed, not how well they can connect emotionally, not how safe they make their partner feel, but how wild, flexible, and seductive they can appear. This mindset creates a cycle where she feels obligated to be the fantasy rather than her true self. And while that might make for intense moments physically, it leaves both partners emotionally starved. The danger of performance-driven intimacy is that it creates a false sense of closeness. The man may feel desired, admired, or even obsessed, but he's not actually being seen. He's being targeted. He's being given a carefully crafted experience designed to win his attention or loyalty, but not his trust or his heart. Because at the core, performance-driven intimacy lacks emotional risk. The woman performing doesn't have to be vulnerable, honest, or open. She just has to be impressive. Over time, this pattern becomes exhausting for both people. The woman begins to associate sex with stress and pressure, always needing to outdo her last performance. The man begins to feel used, confused, or even manipulated, sensing something's off but unable to explain what. Real intimacy begins to fade, replaced by routines that look passionate but feel hollow. Performance-driven intimacy isn't about mutual pleasure. It's about control, perception, and insecurity. It's not rooted in love. It's rooted in fear. The fear of not being enough, the fear of being truly seen, the fear of being emotionally naked, not just physically. And that fear pushes her to perform instead of connect. Emotional detachment in dominant roles is a subtle yet powerful dynamic that many overlook when analyzing intimacy. It's often celebrated when a woman takes charge in the bedroom, confident, in control, knowing what she wants. And while confidence is healthy, what's rarely discussed is how that dominance can sometimes be a mask for emotional disconnection. Not every dominant woman in bed is emotionally detached. But when dominance becomes a shield rather than an expression of confidence, it can be a sign of something deeper going on beneath the surface. A woman who constantly insists on being the one in control during intimacy may not be doing so out of empowerment. She may be doing so out of fear, fear of being vulnerable, of letting go, of being emotionally seen. By dominating the experience, she maintains emotional distance. She doesn't have to surrender. She doesn't have to soften, and most importantly, she doesn't have to trust, because to trust is to risk, and for someone emotionally guarded, that risk feels far too dangerous. When a woman takes a dominant role in bed and refuses to alternate or allow her partner to lead, what she's often communicating without words is, "I'm only comfortable when I'm in control." That level of control allows her to remain disconnected. She can direct the encounter, avoid eye contact, avoid emotional openness, and keep everything on her terms. It's a way to stay safe, physically engaged, but emotionally distant. This dynamic can be especially confusing for men. On the surface, it may seem thrilling. This woman knows what she wants, she's bold, she's assertive. But over time, it becomes clear that something's missing. There's no emotional intimacy, no softness, no moments of mutual vulnerability. Everything is structured, controlled, and intense, but never truly intimate. It's like sharing a bed with someone whose body is available, but whose heart is locked away. This pattern can also stem from past wounds. Women who've experienced betrayal, abuse, or emotional abandonment may adopt dominance as a defense mechanism. If they're in charge, they can't be hurt. If they never allow themselves to be emotionally vulnerable, they can't be rejected. Dominance becomes armor, and as long as they wear it, no one gets too close. Another side of this is the belief that emotional availability is weakness. Some women have been taught, directly or indirectly, that showing softness makes them less powerful or less respected. So they lead with strength, control, and dominance, even in the most intimate spaces. But in doing so, they miss out on the richness of true connection. Emotional detachment disguised as dominance is not sustainable. It may create moments of intensity, but it doesn't build trust. It doesn't nurture love. And over time, it leaves both partners craving something deeper, something real. Because while dominance might win attention, only emotional openness builds lasting connection. Narcissistic seduction patterns are some of the most confusing and emotionally draining experiences a person can go through in intimate relationships. These patterns are not about genuine desire or love. They're about control, validation, and manipulation. When a woman engages in seduction with narcissistic undertones, her actions are calculated, not connected. She knows exactly how to touch, what to say, how to move, and when to withdraw in order to keep you hooked. It's a game, and you become the pawn. At the core of narcissistic seduction is the need for power and admiration. A woman operating from this space uses sexuality not as a means of bonding, but as a weapon of influence. She might come across as wildly passionate, seemingly insatiable, and deeply into you, but what she's really feeding is her ego. Your desire for her becomes her fuel. Your attention becomes her proof of worth. And once she feels she's secured your obsession, the dynamic begins to shift. The seduction is not meant to last. It's meant to conquer. Narcissistic women don't seek to build. They seek to dominate emotionally without appearing to do so. Their sexual energy is intense and magnetic, often overwhelming. They study your reactions, mirror your desires, and become exactly what you want until they no longer need to. Once they feel they've locked you in, they begin to devalue, distance, or emotionally withdraw. The high they once gave you becomes a tool to punish or reward, depending on how well you serve their emotional needs. One of the most confusing elements of this pattern is how real it all feels in the beginning. The passion is undeniable. The chemistry is explosive. You may even feel like you've met your perfect match. But what's really happening is a cycle of idealization, control, and eventual discard. And it all starts in the bedroom. She uses intense intimacy to create a false sense of closeness, tricking you into believing the emotional connection is just as deep. But in truth, she's never let you in. She's only studied you enough to manipulate what you crave. Being involved with a woman who operates from narcissistic seduction patterns can leave you confused, emotionally drained, and questioning your own worth. It's not that you weren't enough. It's that she never came to connect in the first place. She came to conquer, control, and consume. And once she's done, she moves on to the next person who can give her the rush of being wanted all over again. Avoiding true intimacy is a pattern that's often masked by physical closeness, but in reality, it's rooted in emotional distance. A woman can be highly active in bed, incredibly affectionate, and outwardly open, yet still avoid true intimacy. That's because real intimacy isn't just about touching bodies. It's about allowing yourself to be emotionally seen, emotionally vulnerable, and emotionally present. When a woman constantly keeps things on a physical level, when she relies on sexual energy to maintain connection, she may actually be using it to cover up her inability or unwillingness to connect on a deeper level. For some women, true intimacy feels threatening. It requires them to let down their guard, reveal their emotional flaws, and risk being rejected, not for how they perform, but for who they are. That risk can feel too great, especially for someone who's been hurt, abandoned, or disappointed in the past. So instead, they perform. They turn sex into a routine of control, repetition, or exaggerated passion, not to connect, but to distract. The bedroom becomes a stage, not a sanctuary. This avoidance often shows up as a refusal to engage in emotionally charged forms of physical closeness. She might avoid eye contact during intimacy, resist slow or emotionally tender moments, or prefer positions that allow her to be physically there, but mentally somewhere else. Her body may be present, but her mind is guarded. The fear of emotional exposure drives her to keep things fast, surface level, and impersonal. It's important to understand that this isn't always intentional. Many women have never been taught what emotional intimacy looks like. They've been raised in environments where love was conditional, where expressing feelings was seen as weakness, or where vulnerability was punished. As a result, they equate closeness with danger. They learn to protect themselves by never fully opening up, even when they're in a relationship that appears to be thriving. This avoidance can also be reinforced by society. Women are often praised for being independent, unbothered, or strong. And somewhere along the way, those traits get misinterpreted as needing to be emotionally unavailable. Vulnerability starts to feel like a liability rather than a strength. So instead of nurturing real connection, they offer performance-based affection, hoping it will be enough to keep the relationship going without having to face their emotional wounds. The tragedy of avoiding true intimacy is that it leaves both people in the relationship feeling alone. The man begins to sense the emotional wall, even if he can't explain it. He feels the passion, but not the presence. And over time, he starts to crave what's missing, not more sex, but real closeness. And she, stuck in her cycle, may not even realize she's withholding the very thing she most deeply desires, to be loved for who she truly is, not just for how she performs. Weaponized sexuality is a powerful yet deeply destructive dynamic that often goes unnoticed until the emotional damage is already done. It's the act of using sex not as a tool for connection or mutual pleasure, but as a means to manipulate, control, punish, or reward. When a woman uses her sexuality in this way, it's not about desire, It's about leverage. It's about getting what she wants by turning intimacy into a transaction. And in most cases, the man on the receiving end doesn't even realize he's being played until he's emotionally entangled and confused. A woman who weaponizes sex is highly aware of the power her body holds. She knows how men respond to touch, to attention, to desire. But instead of using that awareness to build closeness, she uses it to gain the upper hand. She might withhold intimacy to punish you for something she doesn't like. She might initiate only when she wants something from you: affection, forgiveness, financial support, or loyalty. And once she gets it, she pulls away. The cycle repeats, leaving the man emotionally hungry and constantly trying to earn her back. This form of manipulation is subtle. It can even feel seductive at first. A woman may present herself as empowered, selective, or high value. She might make it seem like you're lucky to have her attention, like you've won a prize. But as time goes on, the pattern reveals itself. She gives you intimacy when it serves her, not when it's mutual. She becomes cold when you express emotional needs. She shuts down when you stop reacting. And she becomes affectionate again when she senses you pulling away. It's all about control. Weaponized sexuality also shows up in how she uses fantasy or performance. She may exaggerate her sexuality to make you addicted, to create a high that you'll keep chasing. But the moment you ask for something deeper, emotional openness, honesty, or consistency, she withdraws. Her sexual power isn't used to bring you closer, but to keep you off balance, always guessing, always chasing her approval. Many women who operate this way are not necessarily evil or malicious. Often they've learned these tactics as survival tools. They may have grown up in environments where control equaled safety, or where they were only valued for their looks or desirability. Over time, they internalize the belief that their worth lies in how much power they can wield over a man using their body. But the damage it causes in relationships is real. It creates distrust, emotional instability, and deep confusion. For a man, being in a relationship where sex is used as a weapon can feel like emotional warfare. One day he's desired, the next he's punished with silence or rejection. He starts to question his own value, walking on eggshells to avoid triggering her withdrawal, and slowly, the relationship becomes less about love and more about control. Weaponized sexuality may create short-term power, but it destroys long-term intimacy. Trust should be earned beyond the bedroom because real connection isn't proven by how passionate the intimacy is. It's revealed in how someone shows up when there's no performance to hide behind. Too often, people confuse physical closeness with emotional safety. Just because a woman is willing to give her body doesn't mean she's ready to give her heart. And that's the difference between a moment of pleasure and a foundation of trust. It's easy to mistake sexual chemistry for compatibility. In the beginning, everything feels intense. The physical pull, the way she looks at you, how she moves, how she makes you feel like the only man in the world. But that passion can be misleading. Many women know how to create the illusion of intimacy through the body without ever offering their true emotional selves. She might give you nights filled with fire, but if her words, actions, and consistency don't match that energy outside the bedroom, that's not trust, it's performance. Trust is built in the quiet moments. It's in how she responds when you're vulnerable, when things don't go her way, when you disagree. Does she communicate openly, or does she shut down? Does she support your growth, or does she guilt you into compliance? Is she the same woman outside the sheets as she is beneath them? Because if her warmth, patience, and respect only appear during physical intimacy, then you're not building a relationship, you're being pacified. A woman who genuinely wants trust knows that it's earned through emotional honesty, consistency, and mutual effort. She doesn't rely solely on sex to keep your attention. She listens, she nurtures, and she stands beside you even when things get uncomfortable. That kind of woman doesn't need to perform or seduce her way into your heart. She earns it with how she shows up in your everyday life. Some women, however, use the bedroom to skip the emotional work. They believe that as long as the passion is there, the relationship is secure. So they rely heavily on physicality to maintain the illusion of closeness. But passion without emotional grounding fades, and when the excitement wears off, the cracks in character become visible. If she can't be trusted in how she communicates, handles conflict, or respects your boundaries, then the passion becomes a distraction, not a bond. Real trust means knowing that someone will honor you when they don't feel like performing, that they'll still choose to show up with integrity when no one's watching, that they won't use intimacy as a bargaining chip or a tool for control. It means they're just as reliable outside the bedroom as they are within it. Because love isn't proven through intensity, it's proven through intention. And the kind of trust that lasts is never built through moments of heat alone, but through consistent emotional truth over time. In the end, intimacy is not just about physical expression. It's a mirror of emotional truth, personal values, and deeper intentions. A woman's sexual behavior, preferences, and patterns can often reveal far more than words ever could. When sex becomes a tool for control, performance, emotional avoidance, or manipulation, it's no longer about love. It's about power. And while passion might draw you in, it's the emotional consistency, honesty, and vulnerability that sustain a real relationship. The women who constantly dominate, perform, or weaponize intimacy aren't always doing so from a place of confidence. They're often acting from fear, insecurity, or unresolved trauma. That's why it's crucial to look beyond the surface. Don't be fooled by intensity. Pay attention to the patterns. Does she show up with the same honesty outside the bedroom? Does she value emotional safety as much as physical pleasure? Or is she using her sexuality to avoid true intimacy and control the dynamic? Trust is not built through performance or passion. It's built through presence, patience, and emotional maturity. The kind of woman you can build with is not the one who only excites you in bed, but the one who supports, respects, and connects with you beyond it. So protect your heart, be mindful of the signs, and remember, the most valuable kind of intimacy is the one rooted in emotional truth, not illusion.